Hello and welcome to the MAC weather page for this Monday, June 18th, and we've got a very hot day again across southern lower Michigan coming up with temperatures climbing back into the low 90s. Further north, it'll be a little bit cooler with highs in the mid 80s, but very high humidities and dew points will drive those heat indexes across the southern part of the state up around 95 to 100 degrees once again today. We'll have scattered storms that'll be on the increase from north to south, spreading into mid-Michigan here really any time here over the next hour, and they'll eventually work their way across southern lower Michigan by this evening. And again, some of the rainfall totals could be very heavy in a short period of time, and then we'll eventually get a little bit more comfortable. We get about 36 more hours of very humid conditions as that front very slowly sinks to the south. And then we could be looking at a pretty stormy weekend next weekend, so might not be the greatest weekend for outdoor activities, but we got a long ways before that, and certainly things could change. Yesterday we had a high of 94.9 degrees. That was 1.1 degrees away from the record high, and we had a balmy low of 70.2, so very warm. Our normal highs are 78, the normal low is 54. You can see we were way above that, about 15 to 20 degrees above normal. And if we look at some of the heat around the area on Sunday, you can see Breckenridge leading the way at 94.9. We had a highest dew point of 76.8, and we had a high heat index of 108 degrees. You can see the other locations that had some very high heat indexes as well, along with 90s and very high dew points. If we look at the growing degree days over the last 3 years, you can see on average we're a little bit higher than last year, certainly higher than 2016. A good graphic to look at each location down here below, and you can see how we've done with blue this year, orange last year, yellow the year before. You can see all locations pretty much that same stair stepping as far as growing degree days this year. We're in really good shape so far. Again, some of the areas in the southern part of the state late in their planning, but I think they'll catch up just fine. And if we look at the current conditions around the area, look at these temperatures. 80 degrees that was at 5:57 this morning at Brown City. Very, very warm conditions for this time of the morning. And you can see the area under the heat advisory once again for today. And if we look at the dew points, you can see in the low 70s, so very, very humid, sticky outside. And if we look at the satellite view, you can slowly see these clouds are going to sink south. And I guess I don't know why my animation hasn't been working the last few days. But again, a lot of thunderstorms. And we got to watch these areas of development. You can see some of the colder cloud tops in Iowa or back in Nebraska and Iowa. And again, as these continue to move to the east-northeast, the overall front will slowly sag south. Some areas that could get under training of some of these storms, repeated storm after storm, could see some very impressive rainfall totals. I think those will be scattered as far as the heaviest rain totals. But again, any place in the MAC area could see some pretty significant rains here if you get under repeated thunderstorm activity. You can see those thunderstorms from mid-Michigan all the way back into portions of Minnesota, Wisconsin. And again, the overall line is sinking to the southeast, and the individual storms will be moving to the east, northeast. And if we look at the, we have a mesoscale advisory out for significant precipitation across Wisconsin for this morning. And you can see this dashed box I put up here is the area where I think these will eventually move into. So in this area, there's certainly a higher chance we could see some very heavy rainfall here over the next 4 to 6 hours. And you can see on the forecast map today that boundary off to our northwest, again, it's going to eventually sink to the south. And out ahead of it, though, a lot of juicy air creating some very heavy rainfalls across portions of the Corn Belt into the Great Lakes and off to the east. And by tomorrow, that front sags to the south. And in fact, over the next 5 days, we're going to see this frontal boundary across the Ohio Valley. You're going to see a lot of flood statements issued here, I think, over the next 4 or 5 days across the Ohio Valley back into parts of the Corn Belt. Again, excessive rainfall is expected in that area. And again, we got to watch this for late this week into the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We can see that front move north as we have a new trough beginning to dig out west. That's going to pump the ridge up in the east and move this front back to the north. And I think, again, over the weekend, we could be looking at the potential of a pretty significant rain event as well. As far as over the next 72 hours, you can see the heaviest rains are going to be expected across Nebraska, down into Kansas, and then into eastern portion or western portions of Iowa, and stretching all the way to the Ohio Valley. But over the next 7 days, you can see that area expands as we expect more and more low pressure systems to move along that baroclinic zone. And again, we have to watch this. If this were to go a little farther north, which I think it may, we could see more excessive rains possibly across southern lower Michigan at least, maybe even further north. So we'll keep an eye on that for this weekend. But until then, most areas will see some pretty beneficial rainfalls here over the next 48 hours. As far as severe weather, just a marginal risk of some storms that could be severe here across southern lower Michigan into southwest Ontario. And if we look at the weather watch for this morning, you can see the flash flood watches and warnings over in Wisconsin, and then the heat advisories and excessive heat warnings off to our south and extending right into lower Michigan. Again, so very hot, steamy day across most of the area. Not quite as bad as you get up into mid-Michigan, but that's where we may see some excessive rainfalls as well. As far as the forecast goes, you can see highs in the low 90s across the south, mid-80s to the north. It'll be hazy and humid, thunderstorms likely, and again, we'll cool down a little bit as we get later on into the week, and we'll start to warm up as that warm air comes back as the front moves north, and again, possibly a wet weekend here coming up. And again, we'll keep an eye on some of these storms later today. Again, some of them could be strong to severe, so keep tuned to your radio or your local National Weather Service website. Thanks for stopping by and have yourself a great day, a great work week, and 73s to all.